Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Blue Truth and Bourbon. I'm your host, Steve. And tonight's Thursday. I know, like I said earlier today, when we did the reminder that college football playoffs are on, so you're not going to miss much. It's Notre Dame, Penn State. I got it all in the background, so I'll tell you if anybody scores. I know I told you guys earlier in the week, or told you last week, we were going to have a guest on here from former Secret Service and former Orlando Police Department, Altamont Springs police officer. And we were going to talk about New Orleans. And he had some things that he had to take care of. So we pivoted. And through the week, I told you that we were pivoting to talking about policing and popular culture and how the movies and television and the media have shaped policing over the last 75 years. And I woke up this morning and I was watching a press conference for the fires out in California, and the mayor was on there. I got so incensed by some of her responses that I decided that I was going to pivot again. So I'm allowed to do that. It's my show. So tonight, as you can see down there at the bottom, leadership when it counts. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about one of my passions, which is leadership and the New Orleans response. We're not going to get deep into the response, but just about the leaders and the leadership that I've seen here lately. And so tonight, we'll talk about that for a little bit. I have brought back for you fine folks, Brian. He's going to be with us tonight again.
Evening.
Talking about leadership and, leadership in the face of crisis, leadership when things aren't exactly going right, leadership, like he says, when it counts. And unfortunately, here lately, there's not much of that going on. So I wanted to read you something first before we start out. Something that I wrote. I told you a couple episodes ago that I'm in the process of possibly considering writing a book on leadership. And I have to read this, so I can't look at the screen. But one of the things that I wrote says, leader, neither a noun nor an adjective. Leader, at its most basic, in my opinion, is an action verb. A true leader is one who is fully engaged with the people with whom they work and is actively involved in the team's direction. A leader's actions are what define them, and it is those actions that are the measure of how effective their legacy and impact will be. And of course, that being said, that leadership quote that I wrote has more to do with actual leaders. So people in leadership positions, but that's not always the case. Somebody that not necessarily in a leadership role, or have rank or a title, can be a leader. So, but tonight we're talking more specifically about the people that we put in charge. And I think, Brian, you were in ASL for a while, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been in leadership roles, you know what I'm talking about. And this, and I don't, again, Brian and I talked before the show and started about our opinions of what's going on. And so, we may say things that you don't necessarily agree with, but that's the joy of debate and having different opinions and growing together. May not be able to change your opinion. You may not be able to change our opinion, but for the most part, we can have a conversation and not worry about, fighting over it. So one of the things that I looked at when I was specifically with New Orleans is Ann Kirkpatrick, who was the superintendent of police in New Orleans, and just some of her responses to media questions. And Brian and I, we just talked a few minutes ago about the same thing with the mayor in Los Angeles with the fires. When Ann Kirkpatrick was being asked questions, she was almost taking some of the questions to heart personally, and I mean maybe rightfully so, but at the same time, her responses to those is what concerned me, because allegedly, I don't know a whole lot about her background. I do know that she was in Oakland, California, and that she was fired out there and ended up suing and winning a lot of money. But I mean, I don't know, Brian. I mean, this lady, one of the questions that she was asked was apparently about the specific things that were there to prevent something like this happening, the bollards or the barricades, or I'm not sure which one it was, but her response was, I didn't know we had them. And to me, my first week in office, I better know everything. And I don't know.
Yeah, I would think, especially for that area, that's their nightlife area. It's their nightlife area every night, regardless if it's during Mardi Gras or not. So the lack of knowledge, and even if it's not specifics, I would hope that whoever the agency head is would know that they have some sort of vehicle barrier devices, be it, stanchions, ballards, garbage trucks, whatever the commonplace is, you should know that. And ultimately it came out that they did have them. And there's been all kinds of information given out about why they weren't up, and they're being cleaned or fixed or whatever for the upcoming bowl game. But again, somebody had to make the decision as well not to put anything up. Well, that's let me take that back. They put a patrol car on the road.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, we see that exact barrier used all the time. And the big thing that bothered me is you got to be really careful on what your practices, tactics, etc. are. They say at this point they're confident that he worked alone, but it doesn't mean that somebody will watch all this news coverage and want to do it again.
Right. And it's funny you mentioned, they use a patrol car to block the road, and her response to that was, and doggone it. And this is me imitating her. She didn't really say it like this, but gosh darn it, he was able to go right around it. And yeah, that's why we have these other tools that we put on the sidewalks that people can get by, horses can get by, but people, can't drive on the sidewalk. And another of our responses was, well, if we had those in place at the time, we couldn't get ambulances in. They wouldn't be able to get in and out. Well, if we had them in place, he can't get in. We don't need the ambulances. And if we have something that requires an ambulance, if you have Bourbon Street shut off, well, there's plenty of side streets that come in there where you can stage emergency equipment. So why wasn't that being done? Why wasn't it? Probably was being done, but her response was kind of strange to me.
And I think the other thing for the general public, and then you add everyone in our profession or is a first responder or, has a military background, when something like this happens, the person in front of the TV camera has to exude confidence. confidence that they have control of the situation, confidence that, they're responding to the best of their ability. And just the comments from the general public that you saw early in the news cycle was nobody had any confidence based on that press conference for pretty much anybody that was there bright and early that morning. And we've all been in the situation that the news is breathing down your throat. They want that statement, they want that news conference, but don't have it until the right people are on scene.
Yeah.
And we've all been in those situations. And I understand that, the head ranking official generally is the person that wants to get in front of the camera, but they're not necessarily always the right person to be in front of the camera, and especially people in our area. We know the agency heads that are fantastic in front of the news cameras, and others you'll rarely see in front of the news cameras, and they may appoint somebody else, and rightfully so.
Yeah. And I don't have a problem with a PIO doing things. If they're a media person, they're able to do it, but like you said, I don't want to have a person that's up there stammering and stuttering, and you can tell how uncomfortable they are just standing there with the questions. And I'm seeing all the comments coming in. What's up, everybody? If you're there, say hey to us so we know you're watching. But yeah, like I said, even today when I was watching the news conference with the mayor of Los Angeles, and she was being asked questions, and she'd step back from the microphone and let people ask questions, and you could just see like her shoulders drop, her face drop every time she was being asked a question. You could just see already the contempt that she had for, first of all, probably the question, or even the people asking the question. And it was almost like she had contempt for those people for asking the question, as though she shouldn't be expected to have to answer those things.
Right.
And, even like, and when I want to make sure everybody knows and understands that, especially people that are watching this later on that maybe not involved in law enforcement. When I talk about law enforcement, I don't just mean deputies and officers. When I talk about law enforcement, I'm talking about, of course, FBI, CIA, DEA, all those wonderful teams that we have across the country that share the same duties that we have. Even prosecutions are involved in the law enforcement process. So even the young lady that was there for the FBI had no business being on television, and for her to immediately come out and the first words out of her mouth, is, "This is not a terrorist attack." That's a leadership thing right there. That's somebody should have immediately, somebody should have been in charge of what was getting ready to be put out, like you said. And it's just obvious that it wasn't, and Ann Kirkpatrick is the lady that's the superintendent of New Orleans Police Department. For her to not know what's there, for her to not understand what tools that they have. Okay. I don't know how long she's been there, so maybe that's a good excuse. But, when you're asked about why it happened or what happened and how could it have happened, and her response was, we're going to look at that. And in fact, because I did take a look at what she said, and let's see, this was an article about her not resigning after all this stuff. Oh, here it is. There will be a time and a place for reflection on our actions. That's not what people want to hear.
No,
the time and the place for the public is right now. And like you said, if you don't have that answer right now, that's okay. If we don't have to have that part of the press conference right now, that's okay. I know when I was studying for the lieutenant's test, and they were talking about part of it being scenario based. And one of the things that a lieutenant had told me, he's like, hey, when we did it, they had you standing outside of a room, and you walked into a room, and everybody in that room was pretending to be media. And as soon as you walk in that room, you're the watch commander showing up on scene, and you get hit with the media right then and there. What do you do? And, that's the perfect example of what you're talking about, about if we're not ready to have that conversation, then we don't have that conversation right there. Hey guys, I understand what you want. I know that you need the information. As soon as I get that information, as soon as we got everything put together, I'm going to get with you. Hang out right here. I'll be back with you as soon as I can get you that stuff. That's leadership. That's somebody taking responsibility, and that's somebody doing their job, not just, well, to use a lack of a better term, Kamala Harris word salad, just throwing a bunch of words out there for people to hear. And I think that's what you were saying. If it's not ready to go, it's not ready to go.
Right. And I went through similar training on the union side of the house, and it was a 2-day school, and the last thing you do the afternoon of day 2 is they put you in a mock press conference. So all your peers in that class, and I want to say there was a good 100 of us in that class, and we were in a large ballroom in a hotel, and they set a podium up, they put microphones on it, and you've had a day and a half to learn the rules, so to speak, of how to manage a press conference, and they give you a topic, and everybody has X amount of times to prep, and then you go live, and one person from every group in the room is the next reporter to ask you questions. And one thing they beat into your head is figure out what your message is and stay on message. And and we talk about all the time, there's a lot that you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay to say you don't know. And like you said, we'll get you the answer to that as soon as we can.
Right.
And that should have been a lot more prevalent in that morning press conference. They were good to tell everybody it only been 3 or 4 hours, and that press conference should have been 10 minutes long. We see them all the times after significant incidents. Hey, everybody, it's fresh. We're still on the scene. The scene is active. This is what we do know. This is what we can tell you. And as soon as we can tell you more, we'll see you again before the 6 o'clock news. We'll have more answers for you. And, we'll take questions. For right now, we can't provide any further information. And that should have been the end of it.
Right. Yeah. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. When it comes right down to it, you want to give out the right information, not just information. And so 10 minutes in and out, as soon as we get it, we'll give it to you. And a lot of it is, it's society today. We have information at our fingertips. All I have to do is go on the phone right now and Google something, and I get what I want. And oddly enough, this actually plays into the topic we were going to talk about tonight for policing and pop culture. Is you think about a lot of the people that aren't involved in law enforcement. And guys, if you're on here and you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to write them, send them to me on the comments. That's why I do this live, so that I can talk to you and we can discuss things. So, but plays into the pop culture thing when you think about shows like CSI. People watch these CSI shows and they think that everything should be solved within 45 minutes and 11 seconds without commercials. And, I don't know if that's probably a leadership issue where we've allowed the media or the public to push us to that point where we feel like we have to get everything out now. But we're so quick to flip the script when something like this happens, or an officer involved shooting or something like that. And people start jumping to conclusions, and then we tell them, whoa, step back. Let's let the facts come out.
Right.
we flipped the script on them. And, so, we're trying to do it both ways. And that's not how it works.
Well, and I just saw Mark's comment, and his experience as a PIO. There's two things. One, Mark, has the personality and the presence to be able to confidently stand in front of the news media and stick the message. At the same time, you have to have an agency head behind whoever's the PIO to support the PIO to put that kind of messaging out. So even if the agency head doesn't want to get in front of the cameras and they're going to let the PIOs do it, the agency head has to back their PIOs, because if not, then you're just cutting the legs out of your PIO.
Yeah, and I know, it's I don't watch the news on television. I don't watch the local news, so I don't know how often it happens anymore. But I know, like, when I was the watch commander and the media was on scene or things like that, there were times where I had to talk to the media. And now I think it's even more of a rare thing that you don't see a lot of, like, you have a shooting somewhere, say, the media may be there and they may be filming, but you hardly ever see somebody from the sheriff's office or even the Orlando Police Department out there talking about it, when we used to do it all the time. Now everything is, all right, call the PIO's office. They'll take care of it. They've got somebody on call to handle all that stuff at night, but you don't see that a lot anymore. And I don't know when or why it went away, but.
Well, I think a lot of agencies, especially in our area, they've turned to X and some of these community notification platforms to push those immediate messages out. Because now, like you said, when it's a super recent event, the news is just reporting whatever the snippet release was on X, and it'll have either the agency listed or the PIO from that agency, and then the official, briefing comes out the next day or a few hours later, again, when the details have been confirmed, the message has been set and there's pertinent information to give out. And you see all the news channels pick those up. Even on their online stories, they'll record the news conference and then, send you the link to it. So if you want to watch it, you watch it. And I think those work out, well. And I think it's made it easier on a lot of the media outlets, because now they just send the photojournalists out. They don't send any talent out with them. So it's all about getting the video. I was on a couple scenes where the photojournalist would ask, just some details. Hey, this is what we saw posted as the call type. Can you confirm that? So the information that they're originally posting is accurate, and I'm good with that. And then they'll always ask, is the PIO coming? Is the watch commander coming? And I give them those answers, and that'd be the end of it. But we both work through the days, and I think Mark, probably experienced as well, as we get on scenes and, we barely got the perimeter set up and the news channels are on there and the cameraman's walking in your active scene.
Yeah.
And thankfully encrypted communications came along and cut that down. But I forget, one of the stations, if you remember, for a while, they created a phone number, and it was the police hotline or whatever. If you saw, an active police call, text us at this number thing,
right?
Because they wanted to be, they wanted to be there. And, I have to give credit to some of the news outlets, because, their mantra now is they'd rather be correct than be first.
Yeah, not all of them is the case, but yeah. And to get back to, the press conferences in New Orleans and stuff like that, especially with the superintendent, we talked about it before the lead up to the show, but I'm not expecting when she gets asked those questions, well, what happened? Why did, how come the bollards went up, or how come this wasn't up? You know, I'm not expecting her to necessarily go, hey, look, it's my fault. We knew these things weren't working. We didn't have them ready to go. So we did the best we could. I don't expect her to take the fall for it. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't see that there's a problem with taking responsibility for it. But to turn around and say, well, it's the same thing, basically, not word for word, the same thing basically that the mayor of Los Angeles was saying today about the fires. That's not what we're here for. That's not what we're here to talk about. There'll be a time for us to talk about that. Well, you're talking to 15, at least on the news, you're talking to 15 people's parents who just lost a child. 35 additional people that were injured. You're talking to their families. They don't want to hear you tell the news media, this isn't the time to talk about that. No, this is the time to talk about that for them. And so a little contrition, a little compassion goes a long way when you tell the people, we are saddened today with what has happened. And we're going to be looking into why we didn't act efficiently and effectively enough to prevent it. But to tell the news media, to tell those people that are watching, I'm not here to talk about that. No, that's exactly what you're here to talk about. You're the boss. You're the person that has decided that you're going to be the face and you're going to be the one on television. So that's exactly why you're here. I get it. If it's a patrol officer that gets ambushed by the media, or a sergeant that's on the scene that gets ambushed by the media, that's okay. Yeah, that guy's, I'm not here to do that. That's not my job. You're exactly right. But when the head of the agency is not taking, and again, accountability is probably the wrong word, because I don't expect her to take accountability for what happened. But her lack of preparedness. Yeah, I mean, she couldn't, you can't prevent murder.
Nope.
You just can't. A murder is going to happen, because we can't predict murders. But I don't know. I mean, her lack of humility, her lack of, in all honesty, her lack of leadership right there was deafening.
Right. And like we talked about earlier, before we went live, every first responder for that city that saw that press conference took an absolute hit in that. You're absolutely deflated when you see your agency head with no confidence get in front of the news media, because that does tarnish the image of everybody that works for that police department. And how motivated are you to come to work when you've made the sound at least incompetent on the news? The lack of confidence in her statement, period, was the most troubling to me. And then to start making uninformed and uneducated statements about what's available. She made a comment about Bob dogs that is very much untrue and makes a whole lot of places more unsafe for anybody who would want to try to do a similar action. I thought it was very interesting, kind of pivot a little bit, that came out of the other cities that they know that guy visited, and one of them being here.
Right.
So we were talking, the group of us talking about this earlier. So I'd have to hope that wherever he went while he was in the Central Florida area, if he was scouting targets or whatnot, something made him decide that New Orleans was going to be his target. So Good for us, bad for them. But, like you talked about earlier, you can't prevent murder. And, anybody motivated enough can do something foolish like this any day, any time of the week. I mean, you know, he could have done the same thing at the Winter Park Farmers Market on a Saturday morning and had the
Yeah.
exact same, you know, impact. The only difference was there wasn't a bowl game, you know, in
Right.
24 hours. But you know, getting to our topic, you just you can't get out there and make statements and not be confident about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the process of reading a book right now that was written by a friend of mine, Keith Groundsel, who was a two-time chief of police in South Carolina at two different cities, and worked for the federal government, worked overseas doing contract work. So, but and it's a leadership book. It's called Leadership Under Fire, as a matter of fact. And in the first couple of chapters, you know, it talks about the different types of leaders, and you know, whether you're hands-on or whether you're servant leader or whether you're, you know, authoritative, you know, whatever characteristics you have, you know, but at the very basic, you know, he talks about, you know, people that have been brought up too fast within the ranks, or people that have been promoted beyond their abilities because of who they are, what kind of box they check off. And that is, again, you know, you and I talked about this before the show. I didn't want to get into saying DEI picks and stuff like that, but you know, sometimes it's very clear why somebody's in the position that they're in. And this lady and several others who have been in the news recently as leaders, with their inability to communicate well, how did they ever get to where they were? You know, why are they in those positions? You know, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about what people do when they're looking for a new chief of police or a new sheriff. Well, a new sheriff doesn't really matter to whoever they vote for, but a new chief of police, you know, when you're doing a search, I mean, I got to believe that at some point, you know, you're looking at somebody's resume and you're looking at the things that they've done. You might want to research that a little bit. I'm sure that this lady at some point when she was in Oakland was on television at a news conference, a press conference, something, you know, and is that the person you want, you know, being the face of your city, being the face of your police department? I'm not saying that she's not capable, but all indications that she's given me so far are that she's not. And, you know, and then I look at why. Well, why is she not? Why is she in that job? You know, I actually just, God, I just lost his name. The guy that was in Los Angeles and went to New York, and she just hired him as a consultant. Mark DeBona, if you're still there, you can help me out. What's his name? Bill Bratton, or he was a chief of police in New York. He was, I want to say he was in California as well, Los Angeles. But, you know, I mean, I guess she's realized Bratton. I guess she's realized her shortcomings, or at least somebody has. Maybe the mayor said, hey, yeah, you might want to find somebody that, you know, can help you do your job, because I don't know that she has a job much longer. And it's not because of the incident itself. Again, how do you prepare for that? Because somebody's going to find a way. I mean, this dude was in, they showed videos. He was on Bourbon Street before.
Yeah.
You know, walking down the street with coolers that had the IEDs in them. So, I mean, that's not the night that it happened. That's earlier. So he puts those coolers on the side of the road and nobody messes with them because, well, that's not mine. You know, so I'm not going to mess with it. And they sit there for a day or two before, you know, you can't prevent that. But I don't know.
Well, you know, I'll take her off the hook just a little bit. You know, it's the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. Are you telling me that the city of New Orleans either assigned directly to the PD or public safety, but the city of New Orleans doesn't have a media relations person.
Right.
They had to have. So where was that person? And I understand that it was Odark early in New Orleans, but that person should have been out of bed in downtown and with the superintendent and that FBI agent, and they should have had a powwow before either one of them stepped in front of that camera. And if that media relations person wasn't confident in the message they could give, they have the tough job then to say, you know what, maybe I should be the person
Right.
to get in front of the camera, and you can stand behind me, and we'll prepare this for comments and questions at noon.
Right.
But somebody else is responsible for that debacle.
Yeah, and we'll get more into this when we talk about New Orleans and the response. But I don't know if you saw this, Brian, but I wrote this down when I was preparing. And so in 2017, these bollards were rated at 15,000 pound vehicle at 40 miles per hour. That's what they would stop. So that's basically like a small, what they call like a small delivery, small package truck. Maybe even a small, like one of the apartment mover U-Haul type, that size, or
like a Sprinter van.
Yeah, or maybe a little bit bigger than that, maybe like a package car, but what they're calling, a medium-sized delivery of a device, or of a you're going to use the vehicle to do damage. The new bollards that are going into place, I found this incredible. Now, we said before, 15,000 pounds at 40 miles an hour. The new bollards that they have that aren't working, 5,000 pounds. So it wouldn't even have stopped this truck that he used at 10 miles per hour. So even a 5,000 pound vehicle at 30 miles an hour, it's not stopping.
Yeah, those aren't defensive bollards. Those are just traffic control bollards.
And they said that the reason they went with those was because these were the best based on a worst case scenario. Well, I think we saw worst case scenario. I think we saw it happen. And you're telling me that's the best. Again, that to me falls back to a leadership issue. Who's sitting in those meetings that made that decision? Yeah, we're going to go with the lower ones because they cost less money. That's what it was. Because it costs much.
There is a facility here in town that exact decision was made. The sunken bollards that will stop a car are X amount of dollars, but the ones that are pretty and just create, traffic barrier between vehicle traffic and pedestrians are much, much cheaper.
Of course.
That's what was installed.
Right.
But in all my times around here, there's three facilities that I can think of that have and I'll call it the Secret Service grade vehicle blocks.
Yeah, and I know that the city of Orlando is looking at obviously doing more because of course, Pulse. And, when you look at it, we are one of those targets. I mean, honestly, it is a situation where, again, it's just when, not if, because of all there is, after, the attack, they're talking about, we talked earlier about Sean Ryan, about the show, and they've been talking on there about, hey, 2025 is the year, and for 4 years, again, a leadership issue. For 4 years, we've had an open border, and So, it's not just a case of leadership at the local level, but, leadership all the way up. By the way, guys, tonight, Russell's Reserve. I don't know if you can see it there, but it says the legend has retired. Gift from my sister. Russell's Reserve. Mark Tabona, got a bourbon with you? I know when I talked to Mark about because we're going to be doing a show with Mark. I don't know if it's going to be in January just because I got a lot going on here in the next couple of weeks with Rolex coming up, but February at the latest, I would say, Mark. But he mentioned that one of the reasons he wanted to be on was because he likes to drink bourbon, and it's Blue Truth and bourbon. And like I've always said to you guys throughout the episodes, the more bourbon, the more truth. That's why probably the DEI words came out of my mouth earlier. Drinking Woodford. Very good. So don't forget, guys, if you got any questions, got any comments, feel free to shoot them out there. I like debate. I like to talk. I like to answer your questions. So don't hesitate. We are live. Obviously, if you're watching this on Spotify later or on YouTube later, you can always post comments on the video and I can answer those later. But yeah, I mean, I've just been, like I said, I had to pivot today. I mean, if you watched, I think I did something, I don't remember, something earlier this week where I said we were going to talk about policing and pop culture. I put out something yesterday, maybe. But I had to pivot. I just, here lately, leadership has just been on the decline. And like Brian and I were talking before the show, I don't know when it happened. I have my own opinions of when leadership turned. And it may have coincided with the year 2020, but it's my opinion. But I mean, it's not, and again, like you said, Brian, I don't want to throw her completely under the bus because it's happened here locally. I mean, leadership here locally. We'll talk. God, what's his name over in Lee County? Carmine Merceno. Even battled in ethics violations right now. And kind of a pay for play type of thing with him. So leadership. A lot of this stuff. To me, you look at some of this stuff, and I say this, and it'll probably be in my book. So when I write it, I'll tell you, and then you can go pick it up, and I'll autograph it for you. But a lot of these people who aren't leaders, they're in leadership roles, but they're not leaders. They have a passion for power, not a passion for people. And it gets to the point where a lot of these things, they go to their head and they forget all about, what the job is, what it's about. It's about the people, whether it's the people that work for you, whether it's the citizens, a lot of them are looking for that next feather in the cap. I'm going to be, I'm this now, but I'm going to be a sheriff one day, or I'm this now, I'm going to be the mayor one day. And, that's all it's about. They're on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook doing all the latest, craziest challenges. And, we want to be liked by the public. And, of course that's the case. We want the public to trust us, but, if you're a leader, especially in law enforcement, your first and most important priority is the people, citizens, and the people that work for you. And unfortunately, leadership is, it's kind of like common sense. Not everybody has it anymore.
Well, and I hate to say it, but there's been a big emphasis, and I'm going to say more in the last probably 15 years, that, now there's all across the state, and I've seen them in other states because I still get the training bulletins, but, they do these management / leadership training seminars, where you get together for a day or for a week and it gets round tabled. And then at the end of said leadership training, you have to do a presentation or some project or whatever that is. Well, I'm sorry, none of those classes make you a leader. It may make you a better administrator, but you either have leadership skills or you don't. And I'm going to use Mark as a prime example on how I met Mark, probably 30 years ago now. After work, driving home and almost being run off the road by a drunk driver, well out of my jurisdiction, call it in. The city limits that I was in allegedly didn't have anybody available. Mark hears the call come out over inner city, and Mark, with his entire squad in tow, proceeds to find me in the car that I'm calling out, and they take care of business afterwards. This is a sergeant at 3 o'clock in the morning that's leading his guys,
right?
And those are the type of leaders that we need more of.
Yeah, and I hope, at least I prided myself on being a leader. In my opinion, I'm a servant leader. But it's like Mark said, in his comment, and I agree with that. I've worked for several supervisors, but very few leaders. And again, to say this, because I don't want it to look like I'm bashing women, because the mayor of Los Angeles, the mayor of New Orleans, and the superintendent of New Orleans are all females. I work for some very competent, very great female leaders, like leaders. Now I've worked for some female supervisors too. But, leadership is not pointing the direction to go and telling them to go. Leaders are there to walk beside. And like you said, like Brian said, you said earlier, when she gets on the news and she makes those kind of statements, every patrol officer in New Orleans, shrunk down in their car a little bit so that nobody could see that they were there. Because they're like, how am I going to go home? My neighbor's going to go, you work for her? and I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's had a bad week. This kind of stress could probably do that to you. But at the same time, it's this kind of stress that leaders thrive under. I used to tell people all the time, because call me, hey Sarge, hey Sarge, hey Sarge. I'm like, there ain't nobody around. My stripes only matter when the shit hits the fan. I'm no better than you. They just decided they were going to let me be in charge for today. And I'm here to do the same job. My patch said Orange County. It didn't say sergeant. It didn't say leader. It didn't say supervisor. And I don't know, maybe she needs to take a step back and look at things and reevaluate and either decide, hey, I'm going to be better, or maybe this ain't for me. Or or maybe somebody's going to decide that for her. But, ultimately, leaders thrive under this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I know we're kind of running close to the hour, and I'll loop it back to something we discussed briefly on our prelim episode, was the tactical mindset. And even in this situation, and I'll take the tactical part being low speed, but her tactical mindset, or any agency head, before they put themselves in this situation, their mindset needs to be, this is my show, this is my messaging, and we're going to go out, we're going to give this message, and I'm going to be confident because I want the people that work for me and the people that I serve to be confident in me. And there was definitely no tactical mindset going into that news conference.
And you want your messaging, if your messaging is your messaging, you want it to reflect who you are.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think it did. I think her messaging reflected who she is.
Well, because it hadn't gotten a whole lot better.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. It's, people have told her entire career, I think, you're doing a great job. And, and again, I'm not trying to, I've worked for some bad people here locally. So it's not a Anna Kirkpatrick problem. New Orleans is a big place. It's a big PD. There's a lot, that's a tourist destination, and just like Orlando. And you have to have, like you said, the tactical mindset, the warrior mindset in that position, in that place, because it's going to not only do a lot of bad people, and I'm not knocking New Orleans, but there's bad people there, I promise you. But because of the destination, they're going to draw a lot of bad people. There's a lot of drugs that move through New Orleans. There's a lot of alcohol use in New Orleans. And so people that do those kind of things are going to be there on Bourbon Street. And if you're not prepared for what could happen, I'm not saying, again, every scenario is impossible, but you need a leader in that spot. And I just didn't see it. And I hope she gets better. I hope for her she gets better at it. I'm not saying she needs to be fired at all. And she needs to be prepared when she steps in front of a microphone. And
my hopes are she gets better for the men and women that work in that city.
Yeah, because if I thought that messaging was mine and that reflection, my God, she's got to watch the news herself. She's got to have a Facebook page, probably, or some social media where she's watching people just lambaste her. If I had an inkling that my messaging was being turned into that, I'd be like, oh, hey, crap, you're right, man, I gotta fix that. That was not good that day.
Well, you see, the Bureau fixed it.
Yeah, oh yeah, they came out right away and said, hey, this was not our message. That should not have been out there. Yeah, which is kind of shocking to me because the way the Bureau is right now. But anyway, I appreciate everybody showing up tonight, listening to me and Brian spit a few things around. Thank you guys for watching. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that today is the 7th anniversary of Norm Lewis and Deborah Clayton being murdered. And we both, we went to the academy with Deborah, and I worked with Norm for a long time out here on the east side of town. Just a very tragic situation, something that should never happen. And so, Mark, Devona, anybody else that's out there, raise a glass I appreciate you guys. I thank you for watching. If you have any comments, keep them coming. Next week, I don't know what to say. We're going to talk about next week yet, but I'll let you know. Friday, Monday, something like that. But thanks for being here, guys. Brian, thanks for coming on and helping me out.
Absolutely. Appreciate being here.
Right now, the score is 0-0. I mean, Penn State is winning 0-0. So I want Notre Dame to win. So go Fighting Irish. But we'll see you on Thursday night next week. Probably a reminder during the midweek, or we might come up with something. Somebody does some stupid crap on television that I got to talk about. I'm probably going to talk about it. Because like I said, this is kind of addicting. It's kind of fun to get on here and spread the word, spread my word. So I hope to get better at this. I hope you guys enjoy the content. I want to get better content for you. I want more videos and war stories and stuff like that. Maybe we'll just have a whole night where I'll get 3 or 4 guys on here and we'll just tell war stories, because there's plenty out there. Plenty of stupid crap that we did that we can never get away with today and be fired for. Probably should have been fired for it back then, but I guess if certain sheriffs and police chiefs can talk a big game today, but we know exactly what they did back in the day.
Hey, we can put a time capsule on it for any of the young people that are in the lobby. We had CB radios mounted to our cars. So
I had a CB in my car, and I thought I was really cool when we got Nextels. But I got a cool CB story that I'll tell next week. I actually got a couple that are pretty dang funny. But so once again, thanks guys. Danny, thanks for being here. Cassette players. I didn't have a cassette player, Mark. I'm not that old. No, I'm just kidding. I had an 8-track in my patrol car. No, I really didn't. I didn't even think we had. I might have had a cassette player in my Crown Vic. I don't know. I know. Eventually, I had a CD player, and then we don't have CD players anymore. So if you don't have a phone to hook up to your whatever it is, Apple Play, or I'm not supporting any particular phone. So, but I am supporting Russell's Reserve. So they can send me some free stuff. ABBA. Man, that show with you is going to be something, Mark. Listening to ABBA, Dancing Queen, that long hair of yours.
maybe he'll sing us a cover.
That's only an ABBA song I think I know. Mark probably has the whole library. Where were they from? Sweden, Norway,
I thought they were
Australia.
Australian.
Maybe Australia.
I thought they were Australian.
Were they from? They weren't from Greenland, or what is it now? Mara Igloo. Their name for Greenland is Mara Igloo.
Sweden.
They're from Sweden.
Mark.
Mara Igloo, or what's the other one I saw? Huge Land.
Huge, yeah, huge.
Y-U-G-E Land. Huge. It's huge. So anyway, sorry for being stupid, guys. I appreciate you being here. We'll see you next Thursday.